dear students and my dear colleagues and all my honorable viewers. Before I move on to my next lecture, there is a humble request coming out from me to all of you. Because I have seen many people watching it, that's good, but you haven't subscribed. So I very humbly, very sincerely, very gratefully request all of you to subscribe to our channel. That's very important. And then the third one is, under the video you have a comment box. If you feel like commenting, if you're happy about my lectures, say something about my lecturing method, which would definitely encourage me. And if you want me to improve my lectures, you can even comment on that. I want your honest feedback. Whether you appreciate me or criticize me, I want both. And this 9th standard ICSE syllabus is not only in India, it is even found in Malaysia, Singapore and other countries. So keep sharing all these videos with all your friends in India and abroad. That's my sincere request. Okay, and I'm trying my best to use only English, and here and there I would be using judicious Kannada. You may find 1 or 2 words in each of my videos. So my sincere request to you is, keep sharing the videos with as many people as possible, and more important than this is, kindly subscribe. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you one and all. The third scene, Act 1. In my previous video, I stopped at, Casca telling Cassius that the senators in the following day have decided to crown Caesar a king in every place except in Italy. Because these ancient Romans, they were afraid of one-man rule. They always gave importance to democratic values. Hence, the senators have decided to make Caesar the king in other countries that are in the Roman Empire, under the Roman Empire, but not in Italy. Not in Italy. Because they want to wait and see how the Italians, the Romans would react. Because these ancient Romans always dreaded, they were scared of dictators. And the ancient Romans wanted to give power to Caesar to be a king in all the other countries that are under the Roman Empire other than, in Rome. That is why Casca says, I'll read out Casca's words. Please open your textbooks. Kindly come to line number 85 in Act 1, Scene 3. Line number 85. Casca says, indeed, they say the senators tomorrow mean to establish Caesar as a king, and he shall wear his crown by sea and land in every place. Look at this. Caesar is going to wear the crown by sea and by land in every place except in Italy, he says. Because the Romans, the ancient Romans, refused to give Caesar absolute power in Rome or in Italy. Because the Romans always feared dictators. The ancient Romans always were afraid of dictators. Hence, the Romans were prepared to permit Caesar to rule the Roman Empire, but they refused to give him absolute power at home, that is in Rome. That's why Casca is very clear when he says, indeed, they say the senators tomorrow mean to establish Caesar as a king, and Caesar shall wear his crown by sea and land in every place save here in Italy. The word save means except. Okay. So when Cassius comes to know that Caesar is going to be crowned, because Cassius never likes Caesar to be crowned a king anywhere in the world. Okay. He doesn't like the name Caesar itself, because Cassius is a very die-hard follower of Pompey. Keep that in your mind, my dear students and my dear friends. So when Casca says that Caesar is going to be the king, look at Cassius's, not response, I would say, it would be his reaction. Cassius immediately reacts. The only reaction Cassius shows is to commit suicide, to kill himself instead of being a slave to Caesar. Cassius is ready to wear his dagger, his steel, in his heart, not in his cover, in his sheath. That's why he says, if Caesar is going to become the king, I know where I shall wear my dagger. That means he is going to wear a dagger deep inside his heart, not in his sheath, as it were. Sheath. Sheath is a cover which holds a sword, which holds a knife, which holds a dagger. Understood? Now, look at Cassius's immediate reaction. Instantaneous reaction. This is what Cassius says. If Caesar becomes a king, Cassius readily says that he would become a dictator. Let me tell you, dear friends, all kings never became dictators, you know. Only a few kings who abuse the power, who misuse their position, have become dictators. Understood? And you and I don't see, when the play is progressing, we have never seen Caesar to be ambitious to become a dictator. Have you ever seen? Have I ever seen? We have been going through these lines, and it is only Cassius who is harping on not allowing Caesar to become the king. He says if Caesar becomes the king, he would become a dictator. Is it not a misconception, my dear friends? But Cassius knows that he is misinterpreting everything. But still he is misinterpreting. He is misguiding people into believing that Caesar would become a dictator if he becomes a king. Because as I have already told you, Cassius is a very, very strong supporter of Pompey. If Pompey had become a king, Cassius would have kept quiet. Since Pompey is no more, since Pompey was killed by Caesar, Cassius, hates Caesar. And Cassius doesn't want Caesar to be a king. It is all personal. Understood, my dear friends? Look at Cassius, how he reacts. Come to line number 89. Cassius says, I know where I will wear this dagger. If Caesar becomes the king, I know where I will wear this dagger. Then Cassius from bondage will deliver Cassius, he says. Cassius is going to deliver himself from bondage by wearing the dagger deep in his heart. That is what Cassius is intending at. Look at this. Cassius says, if Caesar becomes the king, I know where I will wear this dagger then. Cassius from bondage will deliver Cassius, he says. What is bondage? Slavery. What is delivering? Freeing oneself. It says Cassius will free himself from slavery by killing himself. So Cassius is ready to commit suicide. Let me tell you, dear friends, committing suicide was the highest Roman fashion, it seems. Only Romans used to commit suicide. And it has spread to everywhere now, spread to every country now. That's why Cassius says, I know where I will wear this dagger then. Cassius from bondage will deliver Cassius. And therein you gods, he's thanking gods. He's in a way thanking gods for allowing people an opportunity to kill themselves to free from all troubles. Because this man has no right to take away his life. Because this life is a gift given by God. Only God should end our lives. Only God should take out our lives. We don't have any right in the world under the sun to take away our life, to commit suicide. Committing suicide is an unpardonable sin, dear friends. And committing suicide doesn't solve problems. It only aggravates problems, It only increases problems. That is why my sincere request here in this context to all my students and all my colleagues is never have this thought of committing suicide. It is my sincere request to you. Okay, you have to live and face the difficulties, face the world, and with hard work, you have to overcome all these troubles. Got my point? That's what here Cassius says. He knows where he would wear his dagger. And he says Cassius would deliver Cassius by killing himself. And thereby he says, therein ye gods, you make the weak most strong. I'll read out the entire passage. Try to follow every line, dear friends. Look at Cassius. He says, if Caesar becomes the king, I know where I will wear this dagger then. Cassius from bondage will deliver Cassius. Therein ye gods, you make the weak most strong. Therein ye gods, you tyrants do defeat. Now stony tower, now walls of beaten brass, nor airless dungeon, nor strong links of iron can be retentive to the strength of spirit. But life, being weary of these worldly bars, never lacks this power to dismiss itself. And if I know this, know all the world besides, that part of tyranny that I do bear, I can shake off at pleasure, he says. Look at that. This is how he becomes so emotional in front of Casca. And in a way, he wants Casca to join hands with him to become a conspirator against Caesar. And now Cassius has come to know that Caesar is going to be the king. Hence, Cassius in his anger becomes more and more emotional. Look at this, he says, I have explained the first two lines. I know where I will wear this dagger then. Cassius from bondage will deliver Cassius. Then he says, by giving us the power to take away our lives, therein means in that regard of committing suicide, you gods, you make the weak most strong. The weak here are the slaves. If Caesar becomes a dictator, the Romans, including Cassius, would become weak after becoming his slave. Hence Cassius says, by committing suicide, you gods, you are making the weak most strong. The weak can become the strongest only by committing suicide, because the weak cannot go against a dictator. The weak cannot raise their voice against this all-powerful dictator. Let the dictator be anyone, my dear friends. But here, it is Caesar who is going to become a dictator after having become a king, according to Cassius. That's why he says, oh, therein ye gods, you make the weak most strong. The weak can commit suicide and can defeat the dictator. Oh gods, thank you so much. You have given us power to kill ourselves and to free ourselves from this slavery. Then look at the next line. Therein ye gods, you tyrants do defeat. A tyrant is a dictator. Okay, a tyrant is a dictator. And he says, by giving us the power to commit suicide, you gods, you have given us the power to defeat a tyrant. How can a weak man defeat a dictator? He cannot fight with a dictator. He can only defeat a tyrant or a dictator by freeing himself, by killing himself. A slave can be a free man by leaving this world, by killing himself or herself. That's why he says, therein ye gods, you make the weak most strong. Therein you gods, you tyrants do defeat. You means you have given us the power to kill ourselves and defeat these dictators or tyrants. Because he says, let a person be imprisoned anywhere. Let a person be put in a prison made of anything. Still, he cannot, imprison his spirit. A dictator can imprison the physical body and not the spirit. And the spirit has that strength to end itself, to take away its life. And therefore, nothing can prevent a man's spirit from committing suicide and thereby freeing himself from slavery. Okay, look at this. That's what he says here. Nor stony tower, nor walls of beaten brass, nor airless dungeon, nor strong links of iron. These are all things that a prison is made of, Even if you put me in a prison made of stony tower, he says, you put me in a stony tower which would serve for a prison, or walls of beaten brass. You put me in a prison whose walls are made of very strong, brass. Nor airless dungeon. Put me in an airless dungeon. Dungeon is an underground prison, which is airless, which is highly suffocating. You put me there. Or strong links of iron. You can chain me with strongest chains, iron chains. But all these things cannot prevent a person from ending his life. If a person minds, he can hold his breath and die. Look at this, he says, nor stony tower, nor walls of beaten brass, strong walls made of strong brass, nor airless dungeon, nor strong links of iron. All these things can never be, nor gives us a negative meaning. Okay, so remove nor and change can into cannot. Remove nor, change can, the modal auxiliary can into can't. And if you change that into can, this is how this is how the lines would be read out. Stony tower, a stony tower, or walls of beaten brass, or airless dungeon, or strong links of iron cannot be retentive, They cannot have that power. Retentive means having power to imprison somebody. These things cannot be retentive to the strength of spirit. They can imprison the physical body. What about the spirit? They cannot imprison a person's spirit, a person's feelings, emotions. And if a person minds, he can still die. Even if he is imprisoned in a stony tower or within the four walls which are made of beaten brass, or even if he is imprisoned in an airless dungeon, or if he is tied up with strong links of iron, he can still commit suicide by holding his breath. So all these things do not have power to imprison the spirit of a man, the emotions of a man, of a person. That's why he says, when a person's life, or when a person feels that he is tired of, life's obstructions, life's, troubles, then he can easily take away his life. He says, but life, being weary of these worldly bars, worldly obstructions. Here he's talking about slavery. Slavery, which is the biggest obstruction to man's freedom. And this life of a slave makes that slave tiresome. He would be tired of his life serving a dictator like a slave. That's why he says, but life, being weary of these worldly bars, this life never lacks. This life never lacks the power to dismiss itself. That means that life has that power to free. Dismiss means to free itself. A slave can take away his life by killing himself and thereby freeing himself from slavery. Life has that power, never lacks the power means life is always powerful. Life has that power to unmake itself, as it were, to destroy itself, instead of serving a dictator as his slave. That's why he says, if I know this, I know that nothing can stop me from committing suicide. If I know this, if he knows that nothing can imprison the strength of his spirit, he says, if I know this, know all the world besides. I would like to, make all the world realize, understand that nothing can imprison a man's spirit. If I know this, know all the world besides, that part of tyranny. What is tyranny? Dictatorship. I want the entire world to know that I can still commit suicide at pleasure, happily, and thereby free myself from a man's dictatorship. If I know this, know all the world besides, that part of tyranny that I do bear. If Caesar becomes a tyrant or a dictator, his dictatorship, his tyranny would have to be tolerated by his subordinates or his slaves. And Cassius would also be one such slave. Cassius would also be one such slave if Caesar becomes a king and becomes a dictator. Hence Cassius says, if I am made to tolerate that slavery, I can shake it off. I can free myself from slavery by killing myself happily, at pleasure, he says. And I want the world note this. Take a note of my words. If I know this, know all the world besides, that part of tyranny I do tolerate, bear means tolerate or carry, I can shake off at pleasure. I can shake it off. That means I can remove that slavery at pleasure by committing suicide. That is his intention, And he thanks God for giving this weak man that power, to kill himself and free himself from slavery. Then, see, when Cassius speaks emotionally, in a way, nature, by way of thunder, reflects Cassius's feelings and Cassius's emotions. Immediately there is thunder. Look at that within brackets. That means that Cassius is also thundering in his words. That he is ready to commit suicide if Caesar becomes a dictator. Then look at Casca. Suddenly Casca falls into Cassius's trap. And Casca says, so can I. Even I have the power. Not only you, he says. That means in these three words, so can I. Casca also says that he doesn't like a dictator. He doesn't like the concept of slavery. That's why Casca says, so can I. So every bondman in his own hand bears the power to cancel his captivity. Oh Cassius, not only you. Every bondman, every slave has this power to commit suicide and free himself from this captivity called slavery. From this imprisonment called slavery. From this trap called slavery.